In business, you have to find a way to level the playing field against a more powerful rival. My mother's new boyfriend told me that. He didn't tell me I would have to break into a locker to do it.
Hello, my lovelies. Welcome back to the diary. You think high school is tough? Try surviving an elite Gangnam Academy when your mom's new boyfriend runs the entire crime underworld. The spice is hot, the stakes are high, and the disrespect is about to get handled. Grab your tea. Before we jump in, tell me your move. Drop an ice cube in the comments if Kyra should freeze out the hate cheerleader today. Or a phone emoji if she should steal her phone and leak her secrets. Vote.
The Gangnam International Academy cafeteria smelled like expensive perfume and hostility. I kept my head down, carrying my lunch tray toward an empty corner. I just wanted to survive the day invisible. Yeon-min had other plans. She stepped right into my path. She wore a perfectly tailored version of our navy blue uniform, flanked by 3 girls who mirrored her every move. She held a large plastic cup of iced matcha tea. "Oh, I am so sorry," Yeon-min said loudly, her voice dripping with fake innocence. She tilted her cup. The thick green liquid splashed violently across the front of my blazer and soaked into my left shoe. The entire cafeteria went dead silent. Hundreds of students turned to watch. Before I could react, Yeon-min reached out and grabbed the strap of my backpack, acting as if she were trying to steady me. She yanked it downward with incredible force. The thick canvas tore with a loud, distinct rip. "You should really watch where you are going, transfer student," she whispered. Her cruel smile was meant only for me. My chest tightened. The heat of embarrassment rushed to my face. I didn't yell. I didn't fight back. I knew how the hierarchy worked in this building. I lowered my head, gripped my broken backpack strap, and walked away while laughter echoed behind me. The heavy oak doors of the Seongbukdong estate closed behind Kyra, blocking out the noise of the city. She dropped her ruined backpack on the marble floor. The green matcha stain on her uniform blazer had dried, leaving a stiff, humiliating reminder of her place at the Gangnam Academy. She walked upstairs to the master suite. Her mother, Naomi Miller, stood before a floor-to-ceiling mirror. Naomi was a razor-sharp corporate attorney who never lost a negotiation. Tonight, she wore a tailored emerald green evening gown, her braids styled into an immaculate crown. She fastened a diamond earring, her gaze catching Kyra's reflection in the glass. Naomi turned, her eyes locking onto the stained blazer and the torn canvas bag dangling from Kyra's hand. "What happened?" Naomi asked, her voice calm but carrying an undeniable edge. "Just an accident in the cafeteria," Kyra lied, looking away. She refused to bring high school drama to a woman who battled corporate titans for a living. Naomi studied her for a long moment, reading the unspoken tension, but chose not to push. Instead, she picked up a silver clutch from the vanity. "I have a dinner date tonight." Kyra raised an eyebrow, grateful for the subject change. "Another executive." "The CEO of a massive maritime logistics company," Naomi explained, walking toward the door. "My firm handled his corporate merger last month. Chinmi. He is relentless in a boardroom, but he asked to take me out to celebrate the closed deal." Kyra nodded, stepping aside to let her mother pass. "Have fun." Naomi stopped in the doorway. She reached out and rested a gentle hand on Kyra's shoulder. "I am not going alone. I told him the exact same thing I tell every man who wants my attention. We are a package deal." Kyra blinked, confusion replacing her lingering embarrassment. "What?" "If he wants a place in my life, he has to earn a place in yours," Naomi stated, her tone leaving zero room for debate. "He is picking you up first. You are having dinner with him while I finish a conference call with New York. If you do not approve of him by the time I arrive, there is no second date." Naomi gave Kyra's shoulder a reassuring squeeze before heading down the curved staircase. Kyra stood alone in the hallway, her pulse quickening. She had spent the entire day feeling powerless, yet her mother just handed her absolute control over a powerful CEO's romantic future. She looked down at her ruined uniform, realizing she needed to get ready for dinner. The neon lights of the Itaewon diner hummed outside the window, casting a red glow over the sticky table. I sat with my arms crossed, glaring at the man sitting across from me. Chinmi, my mother's new boyfriend. He wore a tailored charcoal suit that cost more than my entire tuition at the Gangnam Academy. He did not look like a man who ate diner fries. He looked like a man who owned the building. So, I started, trying to sound tough. Mom says we are a package deal. Chin-Mae did not smile. He gave no fake, desperate grin like most of her exes tried. He took a slow sip of his black coffee. His dark eyes flicked down to my uniform. I kept my stained blazer on purpose. I wanted to see how he handled a mess. Your left shoe is scuffed, he stated. His voice was deep, holding a quiet authority that commanded the room. The strap on your backpack is torn, and there is a thick green stain on the cuff of your blazer. Matcha tea, you were targeted today. I froze. My hands dropped to my lap, hiding the frayed canvas strap. A girl with a crowd humiliated you, he continued, leaning forward. She made sure her friends watched. You lowered your head and walked away to avoid a scene. My chest tightened. Are you stalking me? I observe, he replied. Your mother is important to me. That makes you important to me. But I do not tolerate victims in my circle. The harsh words stung. He placed his coffee cup on the table and locked eyes with me. He possessed a terrifying, commanding presence. You let them win because you think they hold all the power, Chin-Mae said. You think wealth and popularity make them untouchable. But in business, you have to find a way to level the playing field against a more powerful rival. I scoffed. This is high school, not a corporate boardroom. The rules are the exact same, he corrected. Right now, you are waiting for them to throw the next punch so you can dodge it. Stop throwing punches, Kyra. Find leverage. Leverage. Everyone has a secret, Chin-Mae stated. A weakness they hide behind their arrogant smiles. Find what your bully values most and hold it hostage. I stared at him. For the first time since moving to Seoul, the knot of anxiety in my stomach vanished, replaced by a sudden electric thrill. He offered no pity. He offered a strategy. Find her secret, Chin-Mae ordered, standing up from the booth as my mother's car pulled up outside. I looked through the glass at my mother, then back at the man who just handed me the keys to my revenge. He had my approval. Tomorrow, you do not run, you hunt. The next morning, the Gangnam Academy felt different. The massive glass doors and marble floors used to intimidate me. Today, they just looked like a chessboard. I did not keep my head down. I did not rush to my homeroom to hide. Chin-Mae's deep voice echoed in my mind. You do not run tomorrow, you hunt. I sat in the back row of AP Calculus and watched Yeon-min. She ruled the classroom. Students leaned in when she spoke, desperate for her approval. She projected absolute power, but Chin-Mae was right. Power made her arrogant, and arrogance made her predictable. At lunch, I skipped my usual empty corner. I sat 2 tables away from her inner circle. I watched how she treated them. Jaeyoon sat right by her side, fetching her water and carrying her bags. Yeon-min spoke to her like a paid assistant, not a best friend. That was a fracture in the armor. I just needed to find the wedge to split it wide open. When the bell rang for 4th period, I followed them down the corridor toward the gymnasium. The girls filtered into the locker room, laughing and complaining about the upcoming volleyball drills. I hung back. I leaned against the tile wall near the water fountain, pretending to scroll through my phone. Through the open double doors, I had a clear line of sight to the premium corner lockers. Yeon-min claimed locker 104. A heavy digital padlock secured the metal door. She did not bother covering the keypad with her hand. She believed no one in this school would ever dare steal from her. I kept my eyes glued to her manicured fingers as she punched the buttons. 06, her birth month. Too easy. The lock flashed a red light, demanding the second half of the dual-factor code. She typed 4 more numbers without hesitation. 2023. The exact year our school won the National Cheer Championship. A massive photo of Yeon-min holding the gold trophy hung in the main hallway. Her entire identity revolved around that win. Vanity was her biggest weakness. The lock flashed green and clicked open. Yunmin tossed her expensive smartphone onto the top shelf, swapped her uniform blazer for a gym jacket, and slammed the metal door shut. She turned and walked out toward the basketball courts, her loyal followers trailing behind her. A slow, quiet smile crept onto my face. She just handed me the keys to her kingdom. I slipped my phone into my pocket and waited for the locker room to empty. The hunt was over. It was time to strike. The gymnasium echoed with the sharp blast of a coach's whistle. I waited inside a bathroom stall until the chatter of the girls faded completely. When the heavy double doors finally swung shut, the locker room fell into a quiet, suffocating silence. I stepped out of the stall. My heart hammered against my ribs, loud enough that I thought someone might hear it. I walked straight to the premium corner section. Locker 104. I stared at the glowing digital padlock. Chin-Mae's voice played in my head. Find what she values most and hold it hostage. My hands were shaking. I forced myself to take a slow, deep breath, steadying my fingers. I reached out and pressed the keypad. 06. The lock flashed red, waiting for the second half. 2023. A tiny mechanical click echoed in the quiet room. The light turned green. I pulled the metal door open. Yunmin's expensive smartphone sat right on the top shelf, resting on her neatly folded uniform blazer. I grabbed the device. The screen lit up, asking for a passcode. People who rely on intimidation rarely think they need complex security. I typed the exact same 6 numbers. The phone unlocked instantly. I tapped the Kakao Talk icon. Yunmin had dozens of active group chats, mostly filled with gossip and party plans. I bypassed them all and opened the archived messages. There it was, a private chat history with a senior from a rival prep academy across the city. I opened the thread and started reading. My jaw dropped. It was not just petty gossip. It was a calculated, ruthless strategy. Yunmin had sent photographs of our upcoming senior midterm answer sheets to the rival student. The messages were explicit. Yunmin told the rival to use the answers to secure the top spot, specifically so that Jae-yoon, Yunmin's own fiercely loyal best friend, would be pushed down in the national class rankings. Make sure Jae-yoon drops below the cutoff, Yunmin had typed. I need the university recruiters looking only at me. I stared at the glowing screen, the reality of her betrayal sinking in. Yunmin was not just a bully to the transfer students. She was actively sabotaging the people who worshipped her. She built her throne on fake loyalty and manipulation. This was the fracture. This was the wedge Chin-Mae told me to find. I held the phone tight. The playing field was no longer just level. I held the high ground. I just needed to transfer the evidence to my own device before the period ended. I pulled my own phone from my blazer pocket and quickly paired the 2 devices. The bright screen illuminated my face in the dark aisle. My fingers flew across the glass, taking rapid screenshots of the entire Kakao Talk thread. I tapped the share button and airdropped the files directly to my own phone. Just as the transfer complete notification popped up, the heavy double doors of the locker room creaked open. My blood ran cold. The sharp clack of hard-soled shoes echoed against the tile floor. It was not a student wearing sneakers. It was Coach Park doing her mid-period sweep. Panic surged through me. If she caught me standing in front of Yunmin's open locker holding her phone, the leverage would not matter. I would be expelled before lunch. I shoved Yunmin's phone back onto the top shelf, right where I found it. I closed the metal door as gently as possible, wincing at the faint mechanical click of the digital lock engaging. "Hello," Coach Park called out. Her voice bounced off the metal walls, moving closer to the premium corner section. I dropped to the floor and scrambled under the long wooden bench positioned between the locker rows. I pulled my knees to my chest and pressed my back against the cold tile wall, clutching my phone tightly. The heavy footsteps stopped at the end of my aisle. I held my breath. My lungs burned. From under the bench, I could see the polished tips of Coach Park's shoes just a few feet away. She stood there for what felt like an eternity. The silence in the room was deafening. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying she would not look down. Finally, she turned around. The footsteps grew fainter, followed by the squeak of the bathroom door opening, and then the heavy thud of the main doors closing again. I exhaled a long, shaky breath, letting my head fall back against the wall. I crawled out from under the bench and stood up, dusting off my pleated skirt. My hands were still trembling, but a rush of adrenaline washed over me. I unlocked my phone and opened the photo gallery. The screenshots were perfectly clear. Yeonmin's ruthless betrayal was completely documented. She built her entire high school empire on fear and fake loyalty, and I was holding the exact tool needed to tear it down. The bell rang, signaling the end of the period. The playing field was completely level now. It was time to show the queen bee that a transfer student could sting back. The lunch rush filled the cafeteria with a deafening roar. Hundreds of students crowded around the long tables. Yesterday, that noise terrified me. I would have found an empty corner and kept my head down. Today, I walked straight down the center aisle. Yeonmin sat at her usual table, right in the middle of the room. She held court like a queen. Jaeyoon sat right next to her, opening a bottle of water. I stopped right in front of them. The conversation at their table died instantly. Yeonmin looked up, annoyed. She wore her customized blazer, acting untouchable. "You are standing in my line of sight," she stated. Her tone was cold and dismissive. "Move." A murmur rippled through the nearby tables. Students turned to watch, expecting another humiliation. They expected me to lower my eyes and walk away. I did not move. I leaned forward, resting both of my hands flat on her table. I ignored Yeonmin and looked right at her best friend. "Jaeyoon," I said. My voice was steady. It carried just enough volume for the surrounding tables to hear. "Ask your best friend why she sent the senior midterm answers to the rival academy last week." Yeonmin froze. The arrogant smirk vanished from her face. "What are you talking about?" Jaeyoon asked, her brow furrowing in confusion. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I kept my eyes locked onto Yeonmin, watching the sheer panic flood her expression. I have the screenshots, the exact messages where Yeonmin asked the rival academy to ruin your class ranking. She wanted to make sure the university recruiters only looked at her. "You are lying," Yeonmin snapped. Her voice cracked. She reached out, trying to grab my phone, but I took a step back, keeping it out of her reach. "If you think I am lying," I said, holding the device up, "I will hit send right now. I will airdrop the entire Kakao Talk thread to every single phone in this cafeteria. Everyone will see what you really are." The power dynamic shattered in a fraction of a second. The untouchable queen bee sat trapped, staring at the glowing screen in my hand. Jaeyoon turned her head, looking at Yeonmin's terrified face. The seed of doubt planted itself right in the center of their empire. The silence at the center table felt heavier than the noise in the rest of the cafeteria. Jaeyoon stared at the glowing screen in my hand. Her eyes darted from the undeniable proof of the hidden messages to Yeonmin's pale, panicked face. The realization hit her. The girl she worshipped, the girl she bullied other students for, had plotted to ruin her academic future just to eliminate the competition. "You did this," Jaeyoon's voice trembled. It was not from sadness. It was pure, blinding rage. "Jaeyoon, wait, let me explain," Yeonmin stammered, reaching out a manicured hand. "It is not what it looks like." "You sent my midterm answers to a rival school," Jaeyoon shouted, her voice echoing over the cafeteria hum. "I did all your dirty work. I humiliated the transfer students for you, and you tried to ruin me." Yeonmin looked around, her eyes wide. She was searching for her other followers to defend her. But the two girls sitting across from them slowly stood up and took a step back, distancing themselves from the sinking ship. "Jaeyoon, please," Yeonmin whispered. The arrogant queen was completely gone. Jaeyoon did not answer with words. She swung her arm across the table with incredible force. Yeonmin's plastic lunch tray went flying. It crashed onto the polished floor, sending food and iced coffee scattering across the expensive tiles. The entire cafeteria erupted into whispers. Cell phones lifted into the air. Cameras flashed, recording the exact moment the untouchable heiress lost her entire army. Yeonmin sat frozen in her customized blazer, staring down at the spilled food covering her shoes. She had absolutely no leverage left. Her empire was completely destroyed in less than 60 seconds. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I slipped my phone back into my blazer pocket. I looked down at Yeonmin one last time, making sure she understood exactly who dismantled her throne. Chin-Me was right. You do not throw punches. You find the wedge and you let them destroy each other. I turned around and walked out of the cafeteria. The students parted for me, clearing a wide path down the center aisle. The throne was mine. The Cheongdamdong restaurant commanded silence. Diners spoke in hushed tones over plates of expensive Wagyu beef. I sat across from Yu Chin-Me. He wore a midnight blue suit, the custom fabric catching the dim light. He dominated the space without trying. Every eye in the room flicked toward our table, drawn by his presence. I took a sip of my wine. You never talk about your logistics company. He rested his forearms on the table, his dark eyes locked onto mine. Corporate freight does not make for good dinner conversation. I prefer focusing on the woman sitting across from me. The heat in his gaze made my skin prickle. As a corporate attorney, I spent my life reading people. Chin-Me possessed a flawless paper trail. His CEO title checked out perfectly. Yet my instincts screamed that the man drinking scotch in front of me was a predator wearing a tailored disguise. A waiter approached our table holding a silver tray. He did not bring our next course. He leaned over and placed a small, folded object directly onto Chin-Me's pristine white plate. A paper origami lotus, folded from thick, dark cardstock. The temperature at our table plummeted. Chin-Me did not flinch. He did not reach for his jacket, but the charm vanished from his face instantly. The man looking at that paper lotus was someone else entirely. Cold, empty, lethal. My legal instincts flared. In my world, threats came through cease and desist letters or hostile takeovers. This was something else. This was a silent, calculated promise of violence. Chin-Me, I whispered. Who is that man? Do not look at the waiter, he ordered. His voice held zero panic, just absolute authority. Keep your eyes on me. I held his gaze. My heart hammered against my ribs. He picked up a crisp linen napkin, covered the dark lotus, and dropped a stack of large bills onto the table. He stood up, offering me his hand. The atmosphere just spoiled, he stated, his tone flat and unreadable. We are leaving. No shouts, no weapons drawn, but as his massive hand wrapped around mine, I felt the sheer, terrifying danger surrounding us. The flawless illusion of the corporate executive was cracking, and I was stepping right into the shadows with him. The high of taking the throne lasted exactly 18 hours. The next morning, the academy hallway felt different. Students still stepped out of my way, but their whispers carried a new, nervous energy. Something was wrong. During second period, the intercom crackled above the whiteboard. The principal's assistant called my name, demanding I report to the main office immediately. I walked down the quiet corridor. I pushed open the heavy oak doors of the administration suite. Yeonmin sat in a leather chair across from the principal's massive desk. Her custom blazer was perfectly pressed. She held a tissue, dabbing at fake tears. She did not look like the girl who lost her empire yesterday. She looked like a chaebol heiress who just called in an airstrike. The principal did not offer me a seat. He looked down at a manila folder resting on his blotter. He looked nervous, adjusting his expensive silk tie. "We found this in your locker this morning," the principal stated. His voice was tight. He turned the folder around. Inside sat a printed copy of the upcoming senior midterm exam. My heart hammered against my ribs. I have never seen that before. "A janitor discovered it stuffed behind your gym bag," the principal continued, ignoring my defense. "Academic theft is a zero-tolerance offense. Yeonmin's parents have already been informed of the security breach." The puzzle pieces snapped together. Yeonmin could not beat me in a social war, so she ran to her billionaire parents. They used their wealth and influence to force the administration's hand. This was a total setup. "You are framing me," I said, looking right at Yeonmin. She sniffled, refusing to make eye contact. The fake victim act was flawless. "Your mother is not answering her phone," the principal said, folding his hands. "The administration has already made a decision. This guarantees immediate expulsion." Panic flared in my chest. I knew my mother's schedule. She was standing in a federal courtroom across the city arguing a massive corporate case. She turned her phone off during trials. I was completely alone. I had leverage against Yeonmin's social life, but I had absolutely no leverage against the principal of a Gangnam Academy. The playing field was no longer level. They tilted it back using sheer, undeniable wealth. The oak door to the office suddenly clicked open. The principal stood up, his face flushing red at the interruption. "This is a closed disciplinary meeting. You cannot bypass security." Heavy footsteps walked into the room. I turned around. Chinmi stood in the doorway, wearing a pristine light gray tailored suit. The principal stood frozen behind his massive mahogany desk. The color drained from his face as Chinmi stepped fully into the room. He did not bring bodyguards. He did not raise his voice. He simply walked in, radiating the kind of absolute power that money alone could never buy. "Who are you?" the principal demanded, his voice shaking just a fraction. "Naomi Miller's legal proxy," Chin-Mae answered. His deep voice carried an effortless command that sucked the air out of the room. He walked right past Yeonmin, treating the wealthy chaebol heiress as if she did not even exist. He stopped at the edge of the desk. "You cannot bypass security," the principal sputtered, trying to regain control. "This is a closed disciplinary meeting. This student stole a confidential exam." Chin-Mae did not argue. "I run background checks on everyone who breathes near Naomi," he stated calmly. He reached inside his tailored light gray suit jacket. He pulled out a thin, plain manila folder and dropped it right on top of the forged midterm exam. "Page 1 details the illegal zoning permits you authorized for your private Jeju Island estate," Chin-Mae said, his dark eyes locking onto the older man. "Page 2 outlines the corporate tax fraud Yeonmin's parents committed to pay for that exact construction. Page 3 is a drafted press release addressed directly to the Seoul Education Board." The room went dead silent. Yeonmin's fake tears dried up instantly. The arrogant smirk vanished from her face. The principal slowly opened the folder. His hands shook against the polished wood. He stared at the documents, realizing his entire career and freedom were sitting in the palm of the man standing across from him. This was not high school gossip. This was a flawless, lethal paper trail, underworld leverage wrapped in corporate execution. "You will drop these fabricated charges against Kyra," Chin-Mae ordered. He placed both hands on the desk, leaning forward slightly. "You will apologize for wasting my time, and you will ensure Yeonmin faces immediate suspension for filing a false report." The principal swallowed hard. He closed the folder, unable to meet Chin-Mae's gaze. "The administration made an error. The charges are completely dropped." Yeonmin stood up from her leather chair, her mouth open in pure shock. She looked at the principal, expecting him to fight back, but he waved her away. Chin-Mae turned his head, giving her a single, terrifying look. The message was clear. She had brought a high school rumor to a mafia war. She backed away toward the door, completely defeated. Chin-Mae looked down at me. The ruthless, untouchable tactician softened just a fraction. "Are you ready for class?" he asked. Later that week, a torrential monsoon swept through Seoul. Rain flooded the driveway of our estate. I stood in the dark of my second-floor bedroom, watching through the glass. My mother stood on the covered porch below, her arms crossed tight. The heavy headlights of a dark SUV cut through the storm, parking near the steps. The engine cut off. She did not wait for him to reach the door. She stepped off the porch, letting the freezing rain soak her silk blouse. Chin-Mae stepped out of the vehicle. He closed the distance between them, his jaw set hard. I cracked my window open just enough to hear their voices over the heavy thunder. "Go inside, Naomi," he commanded. "You will catch a cold." "Do not manage me," she fired back, her voice rising above the rain. I build paper trails for a living. Yours is perfect. Too perfect. A corporate executive does not get targeted at a Cheongdam-dong restaurant, and a corporate executive does not magically produce tax fraud documents to blackmail a high school principal. He stopped inches from her. The rain plastered his dark hair to his forehead. I keep you safe. That is all you need to know. I need the truth, she shouted, shoving his chest. From my window, it looked like she was striking solid stone. You are bringing danger to my daughter. What are you? His eyes darkened. The control he carried in every room finally snapped. He grabbed her wrists, spinning her around and pinning her back against the slick metal of his SUV. The fast movement stole the breath from her lungs. I am the man who will burn soul to the ground if someone touches you, he stated. He crashed his lips down on hers. The kiss held desperation and absolute dominance. Even through the pouring rain, I could see the exact moment my mother stopped fighting him. Her hands slipped free from his grip, tangling in his wet hair. She pulled him closer, matching his intense energy. The logical part of her brain must have screamed to run, but the rest of her surrendered to the storm. Then she broke the kiss. She pushed him back, her chest heaving. Stay away from us, she told him, her voice trembling but firm. I will not let your world touch Kyra. Do not come back. She turned and walked into the house, leaving the most dangerous man in Incheon, standing alone in the pouring rain. I closed my window and stepped back into the shadows. The reality of our situation crashed over me. My mother was falling for a monster, and she was trying to protect me from him. She did not know I was already playing his game. The morning after the storm, the tension in our house felt heavy. My mother sat at the kitchen island, a cold cup of coffee resting in her hands. She wore her emerald silk robe, but the fierce corporate attorney was gone. She looked exhausted. Her phone rang without stopping. She ignored every single call. Mom, I asked, stepping into the bright kitchen. She rubbed her temples. Yunmin's father is the largest shareholder in my law firm's biggest client, she explained, her voice tight. He found out the principal dropped the academic theft charges against you. Now he is retaliating. A cold dread settled in my chest. What is he doing? He is demanding my partners strip me of my senior title, she said. He is threatening to pull millions of dollars in accounts if they do not fire me by Friday. I stood frozen. Yunmin could not beat me in the cafeteria, so she ran to her billionaire father. Now, he was using his massive wealth to destroy my mother's career, the career she moved us across the world to build. I will fix it, I promised, my hands balling into fists. No, my mother commanded. Her tone left no room for debate. You will go to class and keep your head down. I am a corporate lawyer. I will handle a hostile board member. You stay out of this. She walked out of the kitchen to take another call, leaving me alone with the guilt. I looked down at the marble counter. My mother was fighting a war she did not start. She pushed Chin-Mae away last night to protect me, and now she was facing a billionaire's wrath all by herself. I thought about Chin-Mae's first lesson. Level the playing field against a more powerful rival. Yunmin's father believed he was untouchable because of his money. But Chin-Mae taught me that wealth leaves a paper trail. If the billionaire was using his corporate shield to ruin my family, I had to shatter that shield. Taking down the high school queen bee was no longer enough. I had to cut the head off the snake. I pulled out my phone and stared at the blank screen. I needed leverage that went far beyond high school gossip. I needed a weapon. The air outside the academy felt crisp, but I could barely breathe. My mother's career was on the line. Yunmin's billionaire father thought his wealth made him invincible. I skipped third period and walked toward the secluded senior courtyard, desperate for a solution. I found him waiting near a marble bench. Chin-Mae wore a pristine light gray tailored suit that caught the morning sun. A few students lingered near the library windows, but they kept their distance, terrified by the man who had dismantled their principal just days ago. Your mother's firm is under attack, Chin-Mae stated. He did not offer a greeting. He went straight to the war. Yunmin's father is trying to get her fired, I said, my voice tight with frustration. Chin-Mae reached into his pocket. He placed a small, silver flash drive on the stone surface between us. "What is this?" I asked. "The end of an empire," he replied. "That drive holds the complete, unredacted financial records of his shell companies. Fraud, embezzlement, money laundering." I stared at the cold silver metal. This was not high school gossip. This was a weapon that could send a billionaire to federal prison. I reached for it, but his large hand covered mine, stopping me. "Why give this to me?" I asked, looking up to meet his dark eyes. "You could destroy him yourself. You could save my mother right now." "Because power is a muscle," Chin-Mae explained, his voice dropping to a dangerous, commanding register. "If I fight your battles, you will always need a savior. Your mother raised a survivor. Prove it." He removed his hand, letting me pick up the flash drive. It felt incredibly heavy in my palm. "Tomorrow is the morning assembly," Chin-Mae stated, taking a step back. "The board members and parents will be in attendance. You have the ultimate leverage. Do not hide in the shadows." He turned and walked toward the parking lot, leaving me alone in the sunlit courtyard. I gripped the silver drive tight. My mother had protected me my entire life. Now, it was my turn to cut the head off the snake. The next morning, the assembly gathered the entire Gangnam Academy into the main auditorium. Hundreds of students sat in velvet chairs. Today was the annual parent board address. The principal droned on from the wooden podium, trying to project total authority. Yunmin sat in the front row. Her billionaire father sat right next to her, wearing an expensive suit and an arrogant expression. He believed his money made him a god. He believed he could destroy my mother's career without a second thought. I stood in the shadows near the backstage tech booth. The silver flash drive felt warm in my palm. The student tech director stepped away from the main console to fix a rogue audio cable. I moved fast. I slipped into the booth and slid the silver drive into the master port. I did not just click open a file. Chin-Mae had pre-programmed the weapon, and I just pulled the trigger. A script executed instantly on the monitor. A progress bar flashed. The drive was mass emailing the unredacted files to the Seoul Education Board and 3 major financial news outlets. Then, I routed the display to the massive main projector. The principal stopped mid-sentence. The giant screen behind him flashed bright blue, then shifted into a labyrinth of financial documents, bank transfers, and offshore accounts. Thick red circles highlighted massive sums of embezzled money. The name at the top of every single document belonged to Yunmin's father. Fraud, embezzlement, total ruin. The auditorium erupted. Whispers turned into shouts. Hundreds of cell phones lifted into the air, cameras zooming in on the undeniable proof of a shattered chaebol empire. Yunmin stood up from the front row. The color drained from her face. She stared at the giant screen, her jaw trembling. Her father jumped out of his velvet seat. His arrogant expression vanished, replaced by sheer panic. He looked around the room, shouting at the principal to turn the screen off, but the damage was done. The emails were sent. The press had the files. I walked out from the shadows of the tech booth, holding the silver flash drive high in the air, and stood at the edge of the stage. I looked down at Yunmin and her father. They had absolutely nothing left. No money, no status, no leverage. I did not smile. I turned and walked toward the exit, leaving the chaos behind. The billionaire thought he could ruin my family. He was wrong. The noise in the auditorium was deafening. I walked down the side aisle toward the heavy exit doors, my heart pounding in my chest. I had just ruined an empire, and the adrenaline made my hands shake. Behind me, a sudden violent shout cut through the crowd. "You!" I turned around. Yunmin's father was pushing his way through the panicked parents and students. His expensive suit jacket was wrinkled, his face red with pure rage. The arrogant billionaire was gone. In his place was a cornered animal. Chin-Mae warned me about this exact moment. If the enemy has no leverage, they will resort to violence. "I will destroy your family," he screamed, lunging toward the aisle. He pointed a shaking finger directly at me. "You think you can do this to me? I will ruin your mother. I will ruin you." He charged up the carpeted steps. He was twice my size and completely unhinged. I stood my ground, gripping the strap of my bag, calculating how fast I could reach the exit doors. Before he could close the distance, the massive double doors of the auditorium swung wide open. The bright light from the hallway spilled into the dark aisle, casting a long shadow over the carpet. Chinmi stepped inside. He wore a flawless midnight blue suit. He did not rush. He did not shout. He simply walked into the room, radiating a cold, terrifying authority. Two men in long, dark coats stepped in right behind him, standing silently at his shoulders. Yunmin's father stopped dead in his tracks. He was only 10 feet away from me, but his eyes locked onto the towering man standing in the doorway. The billionaire's face went completely pale. As a corrupt CEO who laundered money through the shadow ports, he knew exactly who ruled the Incheon underworld. He recognized the real boss of Seoul. Chin-Mae did not raise a weapon. He did not say a single word. He just stood there, his dark eyes locked onto the older man, delivering a silent, lethal promise. The fight drained out of the billionaire instantly. His hands fell to his sides. He took a slow, trembling step backward, his wealth and power completely meaningless in the face of true danger. Without another word, he turned around and vanished back into the chaotic crowd, running from a war he knew he could not win. Chin-Mae adjusted his cuffs, his expression softening just a fraction as he looked at me. He stepped aside, holding the heavy wooden door open. I did not need to run. I walked out of the auditorium and into the sunlight. The morning sun filled the kitchen of our Seongbukdong estate, casting a warm glow over the marble countertops. Everything felt different today. The air was completely still. The constant, heavy weight of waiting for the next attack was gone. My mother stood at the kitchen island, pouring dark roast coffee into 2 porcelain mugs. She wore a pristine emerald silk robe. The fear and exhaustion from the past week had vanished from her posture. She looked completely at peace. She had made her choice. She knew exactly who Chin-Mae was, and she chose the monster because he was the only one capable of keeping the other monsters away. Chin-Mae sat at the head of the dining table. He wore a crisp white dress shirt, the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He looked exhausted but victorious, a quiet reminder of the long night he spent dismantling the rival cartel's accounts to secure our safety. He looked up as my mother set the mug in front of him. He caught her hand, pressing a gentle kiss to her palm. The absolute, terrifying devotion in his dark eyes remained fully intact. I sat across from him, eating a bowl of fresh fruit. The morning news played silently on the television in the living room. The headline scrolling across the bottom of the screen confirmed it. Yunmin's father was in federal custody. His corporate assets were frozen, and the illegal shell companies were being dismantled piece by piece. Yunmin was no longer the untouchable heiress of the Gangnam Academy. She was just a girl with no army and no empire. My personal phone vibrated against the wood table. The screen lit up with a Kakao Talk notification, an unknown number. I unlocked the device. The message was long, written with desperate, nervous formality. Miss Miller, this is the principal. The administration is considering a new dress code policy for the senior class. We wanted to ensure this aligns with your preferences before making an official announcement. I stared at the glowing text. The exact same man who threatened me with immediate expulsion just a few days ago was now begging me for permission to run his own academy. I looked up. Chin-Mae watched me over the rim of his coffee cup. He saw the subtle shift in my expression. "A problem?" he asked. His deep voice held a hint of quiet amusement. I picked up the phone and locked the screen. I set it face down on the table. "No," I answered, meeting his gaze. "Just a loyal subject asking for direction." A dark, proud smirk crossed his face. He took a slow sip of his coffee. He did not raise a victim. He raised a ruler. My mother sat down next to him, sipping her drink, completely oblivious to our silent exchange. The Incheon syndicate controlled the shadows of the city, but the Gangnam Academy belonged to me. Looking back at my first few weeks in Seoul, the biggest shift did not happen in the school cafeteria or the principal's office. The shift happened in my mind. If there is one thing I learned from watching a shadow boss dismantle his enemies, it is that bullies only possess the power you hand over to them. People like Min rely entirely on fear, silence, and social pressure. They want you to lower your head. They want you to react emotionally because anger makes you predictable. You do not need an underworld tactician to level the playing field in your own life. You just need to change how you view the board. When someone tries to intimidate you, do not throw a punch. Do not yell. Step back and observe. Silence is the ultimate weapon because it forces the other person to wonder what you are thinking. Look closely at their behavior. The loudest people in the room, the ones who constantly put others down, are usually hiding massive insecurities. Find the fracture in their armor. True power is quiet. It is about emotional control, strategy, and understanding that you never have to be a passive victim in your own story. All right, my lovelies, that brings us to the end of today's diary. Kyra went from a terrified target to a brilliant tactician, and she did it by using her brain instead of her fists. Remember, the best revenge is always outsmarting your opponent and staying completely unbothered. If you loved this story and learned a little something about strategy, hit that like button and subscribe for more. And tell me in the comments down below, what is the smartest way you have ever handled a bully in your own life? Share your secrets. Stay sharp, protect your peace, and I will see you in the next one.